Darja Isaksson, very excited to have you here at SICS. You gave a very interesting keynote at our open house today. And what does a typical day look like in your life right now, a working day?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I was really humbled and super happy to be allowed to hang here. That was nice.
Our pleasure.
A normal day. Well, there are not that many normal days, but many days are spent researching lectures, producing them, traveling to places where I'm supposed to talk, or having meetings with people who know way much more than I do about how to influence policy or on different areas of innovation, for instance. So a lot of meetings and occasionally sitting in my couch doing research and producing slides, unfortunately.
Slides. Do you read on your couch?
A lot. I live on my couch.
So producing slides, does that count as writing?
Interesting question, because now I've tried writing, and it's the only thing that seems similar to me is the state of anxiety that I seem to not get away from. But other than that, yeah, and there is a point of rhetorics, I guess, that's similar. But for me, I haven't written that much, so for me writing is still more of an unknown process to me.
I'm asking in part because it seems that people convey messages these days through slides. I mean, we live in that sort of culture where slides work better than longer text. But the anxiety that you mentioned, is it a driver or something that hampers you when you make your slides on your couch?
I mean, I guess it's both, because I sort of have a curve of anxiety for any sort of thing that I'm supposed to produce. It's just more that if I'm producing something, if I work on strategy for a client, or if I do, I know my process, and it always has this point of, I haven't gotten this together, which is the most painful point. But I'm comfortable with it. I've been there so many times now that it's familiar to me.
And your clients, do they understand their own problem, or is part of your job to make them realize what they should be asking you for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a consultant, so companies that hire me want help for one reason or another, but there's a big spread in how deep the understanding goes of the challenge, and a big spread in what is the real challenge. I mean, sometimes the main challenge may be of just making different parties in an organization find a unified goal rather than actually finding out what that goal should be. So it's I guess the answer to that is that varies a lot. But in general, I would say the last 2 years has been a big difference in terms of having top management understanding that they need to address, for instance, how their business could or should be impacted by new technological opportunities. So that's a big difference from my perspective, that questions like that are actually being addressed where they should be in boards and top management. Makes me very happy.
And one of your clients, if I may call him that, is the Swedish Prime Minister, because you're on the Innovation Council.
Yeah, they don't pay me that much, so I don't call them clients.
They don't pay you money. Do they pay you anything else? Is it a place where you learn?
It is absolutely an opportunity to learn a lot. I mean, before this Council of Innovation was announced, or before I got the question, I had actually said that I think that more than an Innovation Council, we would need a national CDO to help accelerate the speed of digitalization in public sector, for instance, and other things.
Could you explain CDO?
Well, by now it's also a role that can contain different things. But in this specific context, I would say leading an organization that enables cross-departmental discussion, decision processes related to increasing digitalization, and also, laying framework related to security or interoperability standards or other things that need to run that way. But on the Innovation Council, that's a different thing. That is an advisory board of individual people who get the opportunity to give advice and reflections on which areas that we need to address, or measures that could be taken to promote innovation in Sweden. And that's more, it's not a board that makes decisions.
No.
It's not one that actually produces policy. All that work is being done at the different ministry departments. But from my perspective, coming from as a bit of an outsider, I would say, into that context, and a beginner in policy. I mean, Hans Westberg from Ericsson, it's one thing to be in his role, in his work, and sit there. It's a different thing for me. So it's been very important for me to try to put in more time, maybe, in learning as much as I can, talking to as many more experienced people as I can, both in how to influence policy, but also on what kind of problems do we need to address, etc. So it's been fantastic in that sense. People are extremely generous in trying to help, and then I try to be as clear as I can on things that could and should be done in the areas that I can understand and contribute to.
So the Prime Minister, he maybe 15 years ago, he or she would have thought about jobs, and then 10 years later about growth, and now it's innovation. What do you think about this progress, and do you have any idea of, or what do you think about how well innovation is doing? I mean, how do you measure it for Sweden? You don't have to be the Prime Minister, but more innovation, does that mean more digitization, or more jobs, or increasing the GDP, or
Well,
what do you think?
That's almost like a philosophical question.
Yeah,
but
I used to be a philosophy teacher.
Yeah,
a long time
but
ago.
I mean, we know that we have these major challenges relating sustainable development, and both ecological, economical, and social. So let's just start there. We know we need that. Innovation, opposed to invention or incremental improvement, innovation is taking stuff that is out there, possibilities, new technology, etc., and implementing it in a way that adds significant value somewhere. And I think that innovation right now is something that we talk a lot about, because it is important that we have reached sort of the limit in terms of we cannot keep organizing healthcare this exact way, because then the economy of it doesn't add up anymore in the welfare state. Or we can see challenges in transportation systems that we need to solve in other way. We need to innovate those things. Another aspect, and this is why we have the need for it, I think this is why we talk about it. I think another quality related to innovation is that it inherently means to change something, to do something quite differently. And if there's anything we also know now is we have these global trends of globalization, of digitalization, that both means that it's very necessary and very possible. So the speed of change in general, wherever we look, is accelerating. And many of the things we know about how to drive innovation processes are related to the quality of being able to, move a bit faster.
But hasn't people always said that the delta, the rate of change is now higher than ever?
Yeah, but does it mean that it's not true?
No, of course.
No, it is true.
So it is okay.
It is.
Okay.
Well, I think so. But we, and then you ask about measuring innovation. Again, it depends so much about what we talk about. I talked to the head of innovation for a big international company who said, well, we've been on the Forbes list of the most innovative companies in the world, but they measure how many patents we produce, and they also measure how many new products, but the products are not that very different from each other. So he was even questioning those KPIs in terms of he did not see that from his perspective necessarily meant that they were so innovative. And I think if we look at economists now talking about how the BNP measurements, and we have these problems that we can't see any productivity gains, but at the same time digitalization should have meant productivity. Are they real? What are you really measuring? So you know more than I about this, but I would expect that we will find, because we need to, other ways of measuring.
Do you think, since it's a very quantitative world now with KPIs and as this company representative was saying, I think correctly, a patent can be very, defensive, for instance, doesn't mean that you actually promote any kind of innovation. Are there any qualitative means to applauding companies or entrepreneurs that do the right thing?
Interesting. In applauding them, well, I would need to think about that. But I do believe, for instance, that if you want to set KPIs, for instance, that help an organization take a bit more risk, do a bit more, you could basically just set incentives that you expect deliveries to market, like new innovations to market, with a certain frequency, and then not have so many opinions about what they should be. And I think that is a pretty simple metric that will drive innovation. Actually, USAA, which is a union bank in the US, there's a white paper written by MIT on them, and they applied that and managed to get a fantastic drive in their company. They did other things as well, of course. But for now, for instance, they are the company with the highest net promoter score, which is a qualitative measurement of how happy the customers are. Higher than Apple, higher than Amazon. Fantastic.
Oh, so that's a good example. Thank you. You mentioned also that you see it more or less as a right that the individual should have to gain from open data, public data, sharing of data, data analysis, and you mentioned personalized medicine, which is certainly something that we're interested in here at SICS. What are your hopes for the future? What do you think that something like personalized medicine could bring to the individual, or if you prefer, to society in general? Why is it a good thing, basically?
Well, the first reason why it's a good thing is that it's going to be way more exact and therefore more efficient. It will help us get better health, and that is good for us as individuals, and it's very good for society. Because it's very expensive to have a lot of people suffering from illness, and it's also, painful. So I guess that's the main reason, and I think that it's such a wide answer, but specialization and on a nano degree has been so expensive before, and it has a lot to do with how expensive is it to gain access to the information needed, to take that into account, to make a specific judgment call, decision, etc. So what's actually happening, I would say, is that the cost of getting further in granularity of decision making anywhere is just dropping radically, and the quality we can get now will increase, not only in medicine, but definitely there.
Yes, you certainly see these examples like epigenetics and such areas where I think even politicians would be understanding by now exactly what this can bring to society. But otherwise it's like a policy problem, isn't it? For researchers to somehow explain to politicians that this is now feasible, this should now be done, or am I being too cynical?
Yeah, well, I always think that researchers can make a huge difference in being very adamant in explaining their findings and getting them out there. So absolutely. Yeah, I guess so. I think that also in the popular discussion, media tends to want to pull things apart in the sense of polarizing and simplifying. And my personal opinion is that we've tended to have a discussion related to this, but aren't there so many, security and integrity issues? And should we really be doing this? I mean, the risks must be enormous.
Is it scalable? Is another idea killer.
And from my perspective, that's kind of scary, because if there's something we know now, so that is that under this line, we are being massively supervised, and data is being collected by states, by big companies, etc., used in many ways. It seems to me that we sort of almost ignore that. Let's not talk about that enough. But when we talk about real values here, like better health for everybody and a more fair society or better welfare for everybody, then we start to say, oh, do we really want that? Isn't that a problem with integrity? It's like this, everything that can happen in the dark, and we're not going to talk about that, but we're going to stop, the really valuable stuff. So I think that what we need in terms of health, for instance, just acknowledge that we need this, we will use it, but that we need a regulation that separates stuff like research is not the same thing as treatment, which is not the same thing as giving me as an individual the power to more insight into my specific needs and what could be best for me. So we should have policy that allows data to be used in all these, but we don't need the same type of access. We don't need the same depth of transparency in all cases. So anybody, and I really hope we do this very soon, addressing the regulative issues of health data needs to separate these things and also needs to have a perspective that both cares about personal integrity but also growth. I mean, there's 1 billion new middle class people on the planet coming up. There are huge opportunities here and also massive need. So we need the growth perspective as well and the health perspective as well. So that's what I'm hoping for.
So final question then. In your keynote, you had a sort of a backdrop, the United Nations goals of how we should be innovating really, or what our targets should be. Is this something that defines the way you think about things? That you take the really big issues and see what you can do, or do you sometimes go more myopic, closer to when your clients ask you things that are more down to earth? Do you forget about these grand goals, or is it something that's always there?
It's always there in the sense also that I would say I really believe, and I mentioned the report in my keynote also called Growth, a business case for a competitive Europe, or a vision for a circular economy business case in Europe, something like that. I truly believe that it is better business to build a sustainable business. We are soon looking at huge value destruction and misery if we lose this opportunity. If we address it, we're going to be so much better off, also financially. But when it comes to, do I think only up here, or I think that one of the keys to really seeing opportunities for business is understanding at a fairly deep level, at least, the technologies and new possibilities, and therefore you need teams, first of all. And I think that one thing that has been lacking in many high-level boards or decision-making is the deeper understanding of technology, because then you don't see the disruption coming, because you don't really understand what technologies could make a huge difference in the ecosystem where you are. And Jane Wallerud, who also talked today, she also mentioned that in understanding what new technology could substitute the stuff that you've built your business model on. So I would say that understanding technology, but also understanding consumer drivers, are key to actually making good decisions about how to develop any business today.
Thank you very much. I think I speak for many researchers at SICS if I say that we'd love to team up with you and work on this.
Wow.
So thank you again.
That would be an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.